Ghost of Tsushima has been out for over a year now. When I did my original review back in 2020, I had said that the game just barely hits the bullseye when it comes to really good accessibility. Well, we've had several updates and a director's cut literally right around the corner since then, so I wanted to take a look back at the game to see what improvements have been made since this came out, and also what is going to be in the director's cut, and will this game be more accessible? Well, I sat down with Sucker Punch's creative director, Nate Fox, to find out. Before I begin, I want to remind you, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can see when new videos come out, and hit the bell notification icon to be notified when new videos come out. And also, if you like it, click the like button. Hi, I'm Steve Saylor. I'm blind, and if you're wondering how I'm able to play video games if I'm blind, if you take a look at the video here and the video is not there, click the link in the description down below to see exactly what I see when I'm playing video games. So yes, Ghost of Tsushima, like I said, has been out for over a year now, and I actually just looked at my original review to kind of see where we started when it came to this game coming out. One of the things I wanted to be able to see, and what this video will be about, is actually comparing the original game to what we currently have with the new director's cut that'll be out literally the next day after this video goes live on August 20th. So I am really excited to be able to kind of jump in and see what this game has improved when it comes to accessibility, because there was one thing that I wanted to be able to see a lot more in games, was the ability to be able to increase and improve accessibility post-launch. There is not a lot of games that have been able to do that. It's not unprecedented. It's not like it's the first time that a studio has really added more accessibility after a launch, including even a year after launch. But this is the first time that we ever got to see a AAA game of this size get constant support for accessibility. So let's take a look at and compare the original options that were available and what the new director's cut offers when it comes to accessibility. So this is the new options menu. You can see that there is a new control menu that wasn't there in the previous versions, and they've added a ton of new options here. You have control schemes, as well as the ability to be able to invert cameras, camera speed, and you can also compensate for stick shift, and controller orientation, which you can actually be able to turn the controller on its side or upside down, and you can be able to configure the controls that way. It doesn't have fully remappable controls, but the new things that are for the PS5 is that you can be able to adjust the vibration and the haptics and the adaptive triggers. That's the only new menu that is in this and compared to the previous version, so we'll jump right into comparing the old versus the new. So this is the 2020 version of the accessibility menu. As you can see, there's not a huge amount here, but if we look at the new version, this is the director's cut, or at least the updated version of Ghost, you can see there's a lot more that they've added over the course of the past year. Stuff like subtitle backdrop, subtitle names, large text, enhanced wind visibility, mini game controls. They're all have been added. Now there is other stuff in other menus that kind of enhance the game as well, but as you can see, just within a year of what they've been able to add for accessibility since the game came out back in July 2020. So this is another comparison of the original subtitle size from the opening cinematic when this game first launched. As you can see, the font size is a little bit small. The speaker tags are a little bit easier to see, but when you compare it to the new version, the subtitles is much larger. Now, forgive the contrast. I had some issues with capture when it regards to HDR. It does not look this dark in the actual version of the game. Here's another comparison from the original game to the new one. This is from the original launch. As you can see in the top left corner, the objectives font size is a little bit small, still readable, but could be a little bit larger. But then we look at the new version, this is what the larger font size enables, which is actually great. And I absolutely was able to use this and without having to strain my eyes or basically have to lean in to the screen to be able to see. So that's the difference between the two font sizes from the original launch to the new director's cut. So now that we've seen what the old accessibility menu and what the new accessibility menu looked like in comparison from the original launch to the new director's cut a year later, I wanted to sort of go a little bit behind the scenes as to sort of find out what decisions were made when wanting to be able to support accessibility post-launch. So I sat down with Sucker Punch's creative director, Nate Fox, to find out more. Let's jump into that conversation. Well, Nate, thank you so much for joining me today, and especially how close the director's cut is upon us. I really appreciate you taking the time out to talk to me.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's get into it because I'm very curious about Sucker Punch's approach to accessibility when it comes to Ghost of Tsushima, and obviously that leads into the director's cut. So the first question I wanted to ask was just kind of going back to when you first started the project. What inspired your initial want to add accessibility into Ghost of Tsushima when the game was in development?
Well, for us, accessibility is just trying to be as inclusive as possible so that as many people who want to play the game can play the game. And wherever we find frictional issues, we just try and stamp those out. And that includes not being able to play the game in the way that feels natural for you because of things like handedness, or that parts of the game just present too big of an obstacle from a difficulty perspective as well.
I love that, and kind of I remember kind of going back about a year now and thinking about sort of what was being released at the time, and obviously with you kind of hitting on the heels of The Last of Us Part 2. When you were kind of working on development, you basically were kind of working on accessibility roughly around the same time. So did both did you have any discussions with Naughty Dog about sort of what accessibility you both were working on?
We did talk to same expert on accessibility that Sony has to offer. You know, in retrospect, I wish we had talked to them more. They did such an amazing job. It's inspiring to play their game and see just how broad their commitment is to supporting all these many options. And, you know, I felt it was very inspiring.
For sure, yeah, but that's the thing. It's like not even to even discount Ghost either, because it had actually amazing accessibility options, and I feel it's kind of like a gross to kind of compare the two, because they're two completely kind of different games. But I personally did love what accessibility you were able to add in there, and including in post launch. So what made you kind of decide on wanting to be able to keep supporting accessibility in your sort of post-launch plans?
Like I said, we're really interested in getting as many people as possible to be able to play the game comfortably. And when you ship the game, you start to be able to read reviews, you can read posts that people make online, start getting a lot more feedback. And we took that feedback and we said, okay, where are these frictional elements for our players? Let's stamp those out. So we just got in the process of listening and also talking with that Sony expert again, because of course, when you play the game before it ships, it's one thing, and after it ships, it's more polished. All the pieces kind of come together. So you get a bit of a different experience.
So the game has been out for just over a year now, and you have been able to put out a lot of updates since then, including content and just patches, but you're able to add a lot of accessibility improvements in that along the way, and the director's cut is no exception. So can you talk about some of the features that you're able to include post-launch, and including the director's cut, that you were happy to be able to include into Ghost?
Well, in particular, we wanted to be able to let players remap the controller around how their hands wanted to play the game. So adding 4 new configurations, or 3 on top of the original one, so that it would sit more comfortably based on hand dominance or what you wanted your fingers to do in relationship to different inputs. That was number 1. On top of that, I think just listening to people's feedback. Like the classic example is the game comes out and we hear that people want it to be much harder, and at the same time, they want it to be easier. Because of course, swordplay is at the heart of that samurai fantasy. So we released an update that made the game lethally difficult and easier to play at the same time. Just trying to widen that funnel so that people of different levels of dexterity can get just the right experience for them. And that all came from player feedback.
I love that. What was just kind of a side question? What was your favorite feature that you were excited for disabled players to be able to jump into and try out?
Okay, my favorite thing that we have in the director's cut. This is goofy, but when we shipped Ghost of Tsushima, all the accessibility options were scattered across all the settings menu. And in retrospect, it's ridiculous. So what we did was we put all of the accessibility options on one tab so that the accessibility is more accessible.
I love that because it's like it's hard to kind of like design a menu in that sort of sense. Like, okay, you don't want it to be hidden, but you also don't want it to sort of like be like you want people to be able to find it, but also like not necessarily be hidden. So I love that.
I'm so proud of that change because it's obvious. Of course, you're supposed to do that, but it took us a while to to figure out the basic stuff, I guess.
Yeah, and I hear you. And I wanted to be able to talk about the gust of wind feature that's in there, because I remember playing it when I first reviewed it when it came out, and I was so like I love that aspect of navigation was such a cool feature, and it kind of people sort of were describing it as kind of like a Breath of the Wild sort of type exploration for Tsushima. And when I started playing with the gust of wind, I thought like this is a really cool thing, and what I loved is that you were able to kind of keep updating it to make it even more visible for myself to be able to see. Like there was more contrast, the sound was more dominant, and even with the PS5 update in the director's cut, I love that the haptic feedback like plays into that, and I can feel the wind going from left to right on the DualSense controller. Can you talk about a little bit about the process of basically improving just that kind of like that one distinguishing feature of Ghost, but like even making it more accessible as you went over the past year?
Sure. The PS5 is really offering us I think of it as a new medium of a way to communicate the game to players. So haptics on the controller is something that's new for us. We've long used visuals and audio to bring the game world to life, but as soon as you can feel with a lot of specificity what the player is feeling through kinetic feedback in your hands, the world is much more alive, and you get a better feedback mechanism of exactly what's going on. When you swing your sword and it bounces off an enemy's shield and you feel it in your hands, you have an understanding through your body that you don't have without the haptic feedback. And so it is a way to let the game communicate through other means to the player that we didn't have access to before. And it's like the new country of exploration. We're going to see so many incredible things happen because of haptics in future games. Also, spherical audio is amazing. When you call the wind in the PS5 version and you're using a headset, you can hear it coming from behind you and traveling in a direction. Through your ears alone, you can get a very, very strong sense of the vector of travel that you should do. And I mean, that's just a hell of a thing, right? That the game world is making itself more present and available to you so that you can interface with the game intuitively and effortlessly.
I absolutely love it, and I kind of as a stable player myself that usually loves to be able to have 3D audio or spherical audio or spatial audio, whatever you want to call it. I've been playing with the director's cut and hearing that 3D audio and hearing that gust of wind and pointing in the direction that I need to. It was such a cool thing, and it was something that I do remember. Like I was like, man, I wish that there would like this was in the kind of like it was there when it first launched. But now that I have it, it's like it's such a like it all pun intended. It's a massive breath of fresh air because it is such a cool feature.
Yeah, I'm glad it works for you.
100%. So that's that. Yeah, I can't speak good enough about it enough for to you. So now, like with obviously like with being like you're kind of creating this sort of a platform for new stories. Obviously with the director's cut having Iki Island, and even now Legends as the multiplayer. Obviously with like you're focused on the director's cut right now, but are there like as you've been adding more content and adding more features post launch, are there still plans to be able to include more accessibility in those updates?
Well, right now we're tirelessly working on a very last possible patch for people that are going to get the game. We're still very focused on that, and we're no doubt going to listen to feedback going forward as we have done. because it's such a great opportunity for us to improve as game makers and improve Ghost.
I love that. Cool. One last question. Is there a little, like, is there like, of course, director's cuts, you know, they love to be able to include like Easter eggs. In the film, you see it all the time. And in games, that's definitely even double so. Is there a favorite Easter egg on Iki Island that you are looking forward for players to be able to try to find? Or is there one that still people haven't been able to find on Tsushima itself?
Yes. There's a famous towering rock on Iki Island that kind of looks like a monkey's face. And when you explore that in the game, I would suggest that you pay attention to the monkeys on the rock.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, I'm definitely going to have to go off and start finding that island.
I don't know if you're a monkey fan, but this is for all the monkey fans out there. We got you covered.
That is a perfect answer. I love that. Well, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Nate, for joining me today. I really do appreciate it, and good luck on the launch. And I'm excited for people to be able to play the director's cut when it comes out.
Thanks. I hopefully you enjoy it, man. It was fun to make video games, and it's even more fun to get feedback on what people are enjoying.
I love that. Perfect. Thanks again to Nate for joining me. I really do appreciate him taking his time to talk to me on this little YouTube channel. It kind of feels good to be able to talk to developers like this in this kind of a setting. And if you want to see more of that, make sure you hit the like button so I know that you want more interviews, because I love doing them and I want to be able to do more of them, especially for accessibility. Now, as far as my review of the director's cut, I fell in love with Tsushima all over again. And I fell in love with Iki Island and that story expansion. I would like to warn you, just in case, if you were still wanting to be able to finish some of the story on Tsushima before you jump into Iki Island, or you wanted to try the Iki Island first, I definitely don't recommend doing that, because once you land on Iki Island, you unfortunately won't be able to go back to Tsushima until you finish the main story. So either create a new save just for that alone, or just finish what you want to be able to do in Tsushima first before jumping into Iki Island. There's a mechanic and story reason as to why, but I just wanted to warn you just in case. There is a little title warning that does warn you before you jump in, but also wanted to just warn you myself. Now, the story is actually on Iki Island is great. I love the direction that they were taking with it, and there's some cool, like really awesome elements and more expansion into Jin's story and Jin's history, which is really cool, and the history of just samurais in the time of the Khans and their invasion and the Mongol invasion, which is really, really cool. And there's also some really cool accessibility features that I think should definitely is worth either the price for the upgrade, or at least the price to be able to buy the director's cut. The haptics and the adaptive triggers in the PS5 update alone, to me, is actually worth it for the accessibility. The ability to be able to, like I said in my conversation with Nate, the gust of wind, having the haptics and the 3D audio that the PlayStation 5 allows, really does make that basically an accessible compass. Now, in open world games, it is very difficult to be able to do navigational assistance, especially for those who are blind or deaf and hard of hearing, without sort of having some sort of compass. But especially for blind and low vision, it is very difficult. And Last of Us was able to kind of like enable that, but the problem with that was that it's more of a golden linear path, and there's not really that much open world aspect to it. Whereas with Tsushima, because it's open world, it is very difficult to know how to be able to get to your waypoint instead of just the direction of where to go. I think the gust of wind feature is actually a really great immersive way to be able to do a compass for multiple sort of disability spectrums. I just think that there could be a little bit more that I would love to be able to see more done in games to try to be able to expand that out, to be able to sort of not only provide that compass so that we know which direction to go, but then also provide that navigational assistance so that we can go on the path, the proper path, to be able to get to the waypoints that we need to. But again, the haptics with the vibration and the ability to be able to kind of feel your sword as it collides with another sword, or even just the subtle like the hooves hitting the ground as you're on your horse. It is such a cool experience to be able to have the DualSense haptic feedback, and again with the 3D audio is just absolutely amazing. And I still think is actually, I know that it's a price upgrade and you have to pay to be able to get this sort of accessibility feature, but if you have a PS5 or you're planning on getting a PS5, definitely get the director's cut because it is worth it for that alone. The 2 additional features they added in was the target lock, which has some issues with sort of the implementation, but I think there's definitely something there that is worth noting. So how it works is you hit the up on the D-pad and you're able to lock on to whichever enemy that you are within combat, and you can sort of use the right thumbstick to switch between different enemies. It works for the most part. There are times where the camera can get confused and hide behind a tent, which makes basically seeing you and any enemy impossible, and it's also difficult, especially when you're trying to be able to just lock on to an enemy that's further off, and you want to be able to go for the one behind you, so you have to kind of constantly be switching back and forth. So the implementation is great. I would love to be able to see more updates for that. The second option, like I mentioned in the comparison video, is showcasing the remappable controls for Ghost of Tsushima. That is something that definitely has been missing from the original game when it launched a year ago. Now, there is no fully remappable controls, so you're not able to customize it, but there are a few control schemes to be able to help with that. You can also be able to set the controls so that you can be able to hold the DualSense in a vertical position or upside down if you feel like it. The only problem I find with that is the limitation of the fully remappable controls, because it uses all of the buttons on the controller. You really have to be able to try to hit at least some buttons at the same time, and all the buttons on the controller. So you have difficulty trying to be able to reach those controls or reach those buttons. Again, this game will probably be a little bit difficult for you. So in conclusion, I think overall the director's cut is worthy of an upgrade. And the good thing is, at least the target lock and the control options are going to be available for those who don't have the director's cut. But if you have a PS5 or you're getting a PS5 and you want to be able to try Tsushima, or you have the copy of Tsushima, it is definitely worth purchasing and worth the upgrade. Does it hit all of the disability spectrum? No, it still definitely has some things that are missing from most of the disabilities that are there. But over the past year, we've been able to see that sort of that spectrum widen for accessibility in this game. So it's definitely a lot more accessible than it was in launch. And I actually would say I would definitely recommend this. Going back to my original review, does it hit the bullseye of accessibility that I wanted? Yes and no. It is even closer than it was before. It is not perfect, and I don't think that really any game hitting that bar is extremely difficult, but I think that Ghost has been making a very concerted effort to make it as more accessible as possible, and I think that they are very much achieving that goal. So hopefully with future updates, they'll be able to continue to improve that so that you can be able to continue to be able to play it. So is it worthy of an upgrade right now? Yes. Is it going to be a better upgrade in the future? Yes. So that's it for me. I appreciate you watching, and I thank you so much. And if you have any questions, please leave them down in the comments below, or even better yet, hit me up on Twitter @SteveSaylor, and I'll answer the questions as best as possible. If you like this video, again, hit the like button. If you want to see more of my videos, hit the subscribe button. If you want to be notified when new videos come out, make sure you hit the bell notification icon. Once again, thanks to Nate the Sucker Punch for talking to me today. Thank you so much to PlayStation for providing me the review of the director's cut for me to be able to talk to you about it today. And I'll see you in the next video. And as always, I remain obediently yours. Bye.